Well, welcome, everyone. I hereby call the meeting to order. This is an open meeting of the Broadcasting Board of Governors being held in compliance with the Sunshine Act. A digital recording of this meeting will be available for on-demand viewing on the BBG website, www.bbg.gov. Today, I want to welcome everyone. I'd like to start with an announcement. As many of you know, Ambassador Bruce Wharton will retire from the State Department at the end of September. This will be his last meeting with the Broadcasting Board. This is a big loss for both the State Department and the BBG. Bruce is a true patriot, a wonderful colleague. We have benefited here at the Broadcasting Board from a strong partnership with the State Department, and particularly with the Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs. Bruce is the latest in the series of R's, as we call him, who's been enormously helpful to the success of the board. Since taking a seat on the board, he has shown keen understanding of the importance of the BBG's work and its challenges. He has provided his counsel, his wisdom, his frank advice, and his good humor to our efforts, and he's really been invaluable on a range of issues, some of which we're going to discuss today. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail, Bruce, but I really, on behalf of my colleagues on the board and everyone on the staff here, I want to thank you, Ambassador Wharton. We will miss you. And we wish you all the best down in Asheville, North Carolina, to where you will be moving shortly. So I'd like to invite you to make some remarks. But thank you very much for your service.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and to my fellow governors on the board, to John Lansing and the staff here at the BBG. Let me tell you what an honor it's been for me to serve, albeit briefly, as a fellow governor on the board. I have believed in the mission and profited from the work of the BBG for my entire Foreign Service career, and well before that. As a kid growing up in parts of Europe, we used to tune in and get the news from home, thanks to the Voice of America. I think that this mission remains more vital than ever before, as the world is increasingly confused by disinformation and propaganda. To have a credible voice of balanced, serious reportage out there is really important. I also think that the work of the BBG demonstrates a fundamental American value, that of the First Amendment, the importance of freedom of information, freedom of expression. And so I will look forward to finding ways to support the mission of the BBG as I move on into the next stage of my career and my life. So thanks very much.
Beautifully stated, very touching tribute to the BBG and to the important work that's done here, and you will be sorely missed, Bruce. Thank you. Now, as I do at the start of every board meeting, I'd like to outline ongoing threats to the press around the world. Every day, as we all know, our journalists face threats and overcome obstacles to report the news. All of us around the table are in awe of the courage of our colleagues out in the field, putting themselves and their families at risk on a daily basis. Since we last met, some of our journalists have been harassed, beaten, intimidated. Some continued to serve jail sentences. 2 journalists remain missing. And let me just start with the list here. In China, on August 16th, Radio Free Asia journalist Palden Gyal and his family planned to visit relatives during a stopover in Guangzhou on their way back to the United States from a family vacation. As a U.S. passport holder, Gyal was entitled to do so. However, airport customs and security detained him and forced him to hand over his cell phone, which was examined, and he was instructed to leave China that evening, which prevented him from seeing his China-based family, including his 80-year-old mother. Secondly, also in China, the same week on August 14th, Voice of America Mandarin Service correspondent, Beijing correspondent Yi Bingfeng and his news assistant Ai Lun were questioned by what appeared to be Chinese plainclothes investigators and later taken to a police station where they were held and interrogated for more than 4 hours. Third, in Dar es Salaam on August 17th, Khalid Abubakar, a VOA Swahili stringer, was arrested and beaten by police while trying to cover a story of a traffic standoff between police and drivers in downtown Dar es Salaam. Twice, Khalid identified himself as a VOA journalist to police, but he was nonetheless arrested along with the drivers involved in the traffic dispute. Khalid said he was also beaten while in the police van on the way to the central station. He was held there until he reached colleagues at a local affiliate who helped him in getting released. Khalid is now recovering, and our thoughts are with him. Fourth, in Nairobi on August 10th, VOA Nairobi correspondent Jill Craig and Nairobi Bureau Chief Amos Wangwa were threatened by plainclothes police while reporting on the announcement of election results. A car with 4 plainclothes men stopped their vehicle and accused them of hiring youth to start trouble. Following VOA negotiations in several hours, Craig and Wangwa were released from custody. Now in Crimea, number 5, on August 5th, the presiding judge for Crimean journalist and Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty contributor Mykola Semena again delayed the trial, pushing it back to tomorrow, August 31st. Semena is being prosecuted in a Russian court in the Crimean capital for an article he wrote criticizing Moscow's seizure of the Black Sea Peninsula from Ukraine in 2014. Semena's trial has been postponed several times since it started in late March. Number 6, in Vietnam, RFA contributor and blogger Nguyen Nhiac Gia is serving a 4-year prison term with another 3 years of probation for the nebulous charge of, quote, propaganda against the state. Number 7, also in Vietnam, RFA videographer Nguyen Vna Hoa is being held in violation of Vietnam's penal code for abusing democratic freedoms to infringe on the interests of the state, which carries a maximum sentence of 7 years in prison. In Turkmenistan, number 8, RFERL photographer and contributor Saparmamed Nepuskuliyev remains detained by Turkmenistan's National Security Ministry, where he has been incommunicado now for more than 2 years. And unfortunately, I also have to report, on top of these difficult cases, on 2 journalists who have gone missing. Stanislav Asayev, blogger and contributor to RFERL's Ukrainian service, has been missing since June 2nd, 2017, when he was forcibly disappeared by Russian-backed separatists in Ukraine's war-torn eastern Donetsk region. And tragically, this month, we mark 5 years since Al Hurra correspondent Bashir Fahmy went missing in Syria. Bashir disappeared after an August 2012 firefight in Aleppo. There has been no word of his whereabouts or his well-being ever since. Now, these stories just represent a fraction of the challenges BBG journalists and others face around the world. We must do more to fight this growing violent trend against journalism and against those who practice it. Now, on that somber note, let's turn to today's board business. The presence of 5 or more governors satisfies the board's quorum requirement. A quorum being present, the board may conduct business based on majority vote. On August 17th, the board received by email materials for the consent agenda, which allowed sufficient time for all governors to review the agenda prior to the meeting. We did not receive comments from any governors. This month's consent agenda is at tab 5 and includes draft minutes of the June 14, 2017 meeting, as well as the consent agenda. At this time, I'd like to ask if any of the governors have comments on the consent agenda. There being no comments, do any governors wish to move for the adoption of the consent agenda by the board? Governor Kempner. Undersecretary Warden. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Are there any objections? Now we turn to public comment. And I was talking to my predecessor, Jeff Shell, who said that his big dream was to get 10 people to speak, to offer public comment at a BBG meeting. We have achieved this. At this meeting, we're delighted. The board permits members of the public who register to attend our public meetings the opportunity to speak up for up to 3 minutes. I take it back, we actually have 8 members. I understand we have 8 members of the public here today who would like to speak, to make remarks. I would ask that each member please keep your remarks to 3 minutes in order to allow time for other speakers. Please come up to the table and introduce yourself before you speak. Great. We start with Sasha Gong, if she's not here. Sasha. Okay, so we will then start with Ann Noonan of the Committee for U.S. International Broadcasting. Ann.
Thank you and good afternoon. CUSIB has a strong message today. Don't cut VOA Cantonese service. The freedom of press and democracy situation in Hong Kong is much worse than last year. For the first time in several decades, political prisoners are being sentenced and put into jail in Hong Kong. People in Hong Kong need to know from the U.S. government about our position and support. VOA's soft power represents the American people and our government. For a long time, people in Hong Kong have relied upon VOA's daily radio broadcasting and weekly TV program. These need to expand, especially the TV program. Since the service chief retired on July 1, VOA Cantonese needs to hire a new service chief ASAP. CUSIB reemphasizes the need for Congress to hold immediate hearings and investigate the mismanagement of the BBG and VOA prior to, during, and following the interview that took place on April 19th of Chinese billionaire turned whistleblower Guo Wengui, which was abruptly cut during a widely publicized live interview. We further request for the State Department's Office of Inspector General to investigate all parties concerned with that incident, including VOA's top management. We also call for an investigation by a law enforcement agency to find out if China has been able to exercise its influence within VOA. These investigations must include any profits and investments that may have resulted from any possible conflicts of interest by anyone in the BBG-VO management, their spouses, or any BBG governors, especially the East Asia and Pacific Division. Out of the 5 senior VOA Mandarin Service journalists who were placed on administrative leave 4 months ago, 4 remain on administrative leave with no hope of returning to work. Despite the fact that none have been charged with wrongdoing, they are still paying for their own attorneys to represent them. Is it true that VOA handed out personal information about these employees to an investigation company with a foreign national in China? In response to reports about one VOA reporter who wore a white flower like this one on April 20th, and who was interrogated by BBG Human Resources for wearing the flower, we urge all BBG governors to insist that BBG and VOA management discontinue any and all intimidating practices against their workers. This includes intimidating staff at meetings. CUSIB remains concerned about the selection of the last 2 acting service chiefs of Mandarin service since May 1. Do either of these men even speak Mandarin? Is it true that at least one story that was to be aired and could not until there was a pro-China expert on the show to balance the story? Is this the new rule? Can you imagine anyone at VOA insisting that the Tiananmen Square massacre story could not be aired unless they had a pro-China expert to defend China's goals? To echo the words of late CUSIB board member Harry Wu, we all want a peaceful and prosperous China that respects human rights, because this will benefit both China and America. VOA should realize that in recent months, China's government has strengthened its control of speech and the internet. They have asked major computer companies, including Microsoft and Apple, to restrict and remove virtual private networks. Does VOA realize the consequences of China's control of its ethnic minorities, especially in the Xinjiang Urumqi Autonomous Region? Those residents now must bring their computers, hard drives, mobile phones, and other devices to the police for inspection, or they will be punished. We look forward to your reply. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
大家好，我叫赵岩，因为我的英语不好，所以请翻译帮我翻译，谢谢。
My name is Zhao Yan. Well, so I have my translator here.
我原来是《纽约时报》北京分社的中国问题研究员，现在是 VOA 的签约的嘉宾。
I used to work for New York Times Beijing Bureau. Now I am a contract political commentator in VOA.
在4月19号之前，我们都荣幸地接到了 VOA 卫视，要做3个小时的这个关于郭文贵爆料中国共产党和中国政府的腐败问题。
We were told before 19th of April that Mr. Guo Wengui is going to go on TV for 3 hours to report about the corruption of Chinese government.
但是非常遗憾，当这个直播和采访进行到1个多小时的时候，我们却在电视画面当中看到它已经断播了。
But unfortunately, only after a little bit more than an hour, it was interrupted abruptly during the broadcasting.
所以我的问题是，BBG 和美国政府进行了长达几个月的调查。
So my question is, after so many months of investigation by U.S. government and BBC,
我们听说在断播的时候，是由于中国政府在北京的这个代表对 VOA 的记者进行威胁，和有关中国大使崔天凯在这个节目进行中给这个 VOA 打电话，和北京的强制部门给这个在场的这个控制直播的张晶先生打电话。
we were told that there were rumors that the Chinese government, including Cui Tiankai, they called the VOA people to order them to stop the broadcasting.
但时至今日，我们没有看到 BBG， 作为这个美国政府的有关部门，给公众和纳税人有一个合理的解释。
But until today, we did not hear any result, the investigation result from BBC or U.S. government about this investigation.
为此，我曾经和这个著名的华人律师叶宁先生，还有陈闯闯博士。
Because of this, I came to protest together with a famous Chinese lawyer, Ye Ling, and Chen Chuang.
2次到 BBG 的楼下和 VOA 卫视的楼下进行抗议。
2 times we came to protest in front of the VOA building.
求解答案。
And ask for the result and answers.
但是 VOA 的领导至今没有给大家和公众以及美国人民和中国人民有一个合理、科学的解释。
But the leaders of VOA until today did not give any answer to the public and to both Chinese and U.S. people.
新闻的真相就在于真实。
It is very important to state fact about news.
新闻
The truth is the life of news.
新闻的生命也在于真实。
The truth about news is very important for us to know.
如果 VOA 不死和美国的新闻普世价值、真实的这种原则不死的话，我们希望 BBG 尽快的给出我们真相和答案。
If BOA and the BBC continue exist, we are hoping that we can get a result and answer pretty soon.
而不是因为我们到楼下抗议。
On the contrary, because we came to protest in front of your building,
由张晶指示他的部下，让我和另外3位嘉宾
Zhang Jing, we were told that Zhang Jing ordered me, included, and 3 other people, to lose the opportunity to be the TV commentator in BOA.
剥夺我们在美国的自由的土地上，尤其是美国政府的 VOA 发言的机会。
Our right of free speech on American land, especially in U.S. government agency, were deprived.
在此也希望 VOA 的领导能够重视断播事件，尽早的恢复对光贵先生的爆料的节目的继续。
So I hope that you can continue report on Guo Wengui's event.
让中国人民和美国人民以及世界人民知道中国政府和中国共产党巨大的腐败的真相。
So the whole world can know how corrupted is Chinese government.
新闻的真相是封不住的，
The truth cannot be hid.
要让那种把新闻真相封住的那种想法和病毒尽快的消失。
So we should let we should let this kind of behavior who try to prevent the truth from going out disappeared.
谢谢大家。
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Governors, Director Lansing, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Adam Powell. I'm President of the Public Diplomacy Council and Director of Washington Programs for the University of Southern California's Annenberg Center for Communication Leadership and Policy. But these remarks are not the views of those organizations, they are solely my own. Everyone in this room has a goal of telling America's story and linking America to the world. And all of us here in Washington look to our national government as a primary source. But there are other sources, not only of the American story, but of stories of America's links to the world. Those are the states and territories of these United States of America. A few months ago, the National Governors Association held its annual summer meeting in Rhode Island, and one trend was obvious. The governors are now key points of contact between the U.S. and our partners and adversaries overseas. The opening lunch of the NGA meeting was hosted by China's ambassador to the United States and was attended by senior officials from its embassy here in Washington and of its consulate in New York. Later, the keynote addresses were by Vice President Pence and by Canada's Prime Minister Trudeau. The response came from the mayor of Mexico City. According to the NGA, this was an unprecedented level of participation by foreign countries, all anxious to make contact directly with state governments, not through Washington, D.C. Much of this is for economic development. Toyota in Tennessee, Airbus in Alabama are old stories. But we here in Washington may not see just how important this has become. Kentucky's governor said foreign investment in his state had increased several-fold and is now in the billions of dollars, and that's just Kentucky. So much of this goes beyond business. Take education. Qatar now directly funds Arabic language programs in K-12 schools around the U.S. Spain targets young Hispanic leaders in the U.S. for exchange programs. And of course, Confucius Institutes have multiplied on college campuses across America. The states are responding. This month, the USC and the Public Diplomacy Council presented a forum on South Carolina's International Education Exchange that links K-12 school students in South Carolina with students around the world. With technical assistance from the MIT Media Lab, schools in the U.S. are paired with schools across the world for daily or weekly live, two-way video lessons and student-to-student exchanges. South Carolina now has 84 projects in elementary, middle, and high schools with partner K-12 schools in China, Russia, South Africa, Kenya, Ghana, Madagascar, Zimbabwe, Spain, Ireland, Greece, Malta, Romania, Cyprus, Croatia, Brazil, Colombia, Belize, and the Dominican Republic. And they say every teacher in every classroom in every country has renewed for another year. Now working with partners including Harvard, Google, the BBC, the British Council, and UNESCO, South Carolina is expanding its program to a targeted 1 million students around the world. That's just South Carolina. There must be more in other states. We often say that the states are America's laboratories of democracy. They should be part of the American story that we share with the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other speakers for public comment? Because others have signed up. I don't see them necessarily here. I guess that concludes the public remarks phase. Governor Shell, sorry, you win, but we'll try harder. Now I'd like to ask CEO and Director John Lansing to give a brief report on agency operations since our last board meeting. But before I do that, I do want to thank everyone for offering their public comments. They are taken seriously. We hear you around the table, I can assure you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Governors. I'd like to begin just with a personnel matter that's near and dear to me, and that is Rob Fallon, our Chief of Staff, my Chief of Staff, and of course, working closely with the board, is departing for a wonderful opportunity with an Annenberg Foundation Trust at Sunnylands as the Director of External Relations. Rob was my first hire 2 years ago. and has been an exceptional leader of leaders here at the BBG and has led several projects that have really marked some high points along the way over these 2 years. Rob, we're going to miss you. We send you off with our best wishes. And if anything you'd like to say before we conclude this?
Yeah, I'll be real quick. I thank you, John. I really appreciate that, and it's been a real honor to work for you and for this board. Really, just the team follows the leadership, and we've really just kind of known exactly where to go at all times. I also mentioned the network heads. Some of them are here, some who are not. Just a real pleasure to work with you all as well. And I guess what I would say is, John, you mentioned me, but I think the thing that I'm most proud of is just the team that we've managed to put together here at BBG. I think we've really turned the corner on a couple things, and I'll look back, and just the thing I'm going to be most proud of is having kind of had your go to put together the team that we need to succeed. And I know that they have you placed, and this board placed to continue to be where we need to be. So thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you, Rob. Join me in giving Rob a round of applause. As you know, but we don't say it enough, the BBG networks advance U.S. national interests by providing audiences in closed societies or where free media is not yet fully established with consistently accurate, compelling, and professional journalism. In this rapidly evolving global media environment, the work of U.S. international media has never been more important. I'd now like to invite the ICC to present some of the more interesting and compelling content that they've developed since our last board meeting. And we'll start with RFERL and Tom Kent to talk about reporting in Central Asia and how that has been advancing over the recent weeks and months. Tom, please go ahead.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, governors, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about RFERL in Central Asia.
در تاجیکستان و جهان امروز 2 آگوست چی میگذرد؟ من شالوگل خوجا شما را از استودیو مرکزی رادیو آزادی آشنا میکنم. سلام. امروز در برنامه.
That's the daily RFERL video newscast in Tajik, one of 5 national languages we operate in for the former Soviet republics of Central Asia. All of these republics are now independent countries. No other region we serve represents as many different challenges and opportunities. These 5 nations share a strong heritage of Soviet authoritarianism. They're targets of disinformation from outside, nearly surrounded by Russia, China, and Iran. ISIS recruits their citizens for extremist attacks from Syria to Europe. Yet these countries are not all the same. Some are making progress toward freedoms they've never had before. Elsewhere, dictatorship continues. As the only outside source of local news in these countries' own languages, RFERL plays a critical role in promoting democracy, tolerance, and clean government. RFERL reaches audiences in Central Asia by traditional shortwave radio, but now, much more importantly, by satellite radio, television, the internet, and social networks. We have bureaus in every country except Turkmenistan. In some countries, we have local broadcast affiliates. In Kyrgyzstan, we reach nearly 40% of the population. In Turkmenistan, by contrast, you can have your satellite dish seized if it's pointed at the satellite that carries us. Chairman Weinstein spoke earlier of our contributor, Sapar Mehmed Nepeskuliyev, still in a Turkmen prison, and the outrageous attacks on our Turkmen freelancer, Sultan Achilova. Beyond our own direct service across Central Asia, we run a content source for local media at centralasian.org. It offers RFERL's work for free to newspapers, websites, and more than 150 local broadcasters that desperately need reliable content. Here's one of our videos on an Uzbek TV station with our logo in the corner. In one recent week, our stories, photos, or video appeared on more than 140 websites. Here's a video of ours on one site and a headline on another, leading to an RFE story. We work closely with other BBG units. The news service is powered by the BBG Direct content sharing platform. And in news reporting, we've partnered with Radio Free Asia on cross-border stories involving Central Asia and China. Right now, we're re-equipping our Central Asian bureaus to do more and better video. In terms of audience, we're getting more than 10 million views a month on our Tajik YouTube channel. Our Uzbek audio is listened to nearly 5 million times monthly. Thanks to the approval of our 2017 budget, we're stepping up social media and video to the region with a special 20-person unit. We're also expanding into Central Asia, the Raise Your Voice initiative begun by MBN. Current Time Television in Russian will also continue its focus on this region, where many people speak Russian fluently. Current Time already carries a special nightly newscast aimed at Central Asian audiences. Current Time programming, which includes content from VOA, is being carried by local broadcasters in Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. Elsewhere in Central Asia, it's available by web stream and social networks. This is a dynamic time in Central Asia. All 5 countries in the region are looking to strengthen their mutual aid and solidarity. Kyrgyzstan is moving toward a peaceful change in leadership in October. We see signs of liberalization in Uzbekistan under new Premier Mirziyoyev. Kazakhstan is charting its own destiny amid the great powers that surround it. An RFE-RL correspondent in Kazakhstan, Sanya Toykin, will be honored in October by the International Women's Media Federation, alongside U.S. journalists like Deborah Amos and Andrea Mitchell. Governor, Central Asia is a great story for RFE-RL to cover. The challenges in the region perfectly fit our mission. We're grateful for your support.
Thank you, Tom. Well done. Governors, any questions, comments for Tom?
Yeah, Tom, let me congratulate you. That's very impressive, what's going on, and the need for news in the region is extraordinary given the kind of governments that are there and the international pressures that they're under. As as the One Belt, One Road initiative starts to shape up, how is that affecting the way you do coverage?
Well, it's certainly something that is going to be a focus of ours, and we're going to be working more. We've talked about this already with RFA and others to plot the movement of that initiative through the area. Some of the road and belt projects that are being announced or they're considered part of this project actually have existed in these places before. They're being put under this new rubric. But we'll be paying a lot of attention to what's really new about this and what benefits there actually are to the countries involved.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? So moving now to OCB. Last year, you recall, Malule developed, produced, and hosted an Internet Freedom Conference for the island of Cuba, and it was highly successful. It began with a video greeting and opening from Senator Marco Rubio, who was very positive about the decision to put this conference together. And so Malule, working with us, has decided that we'll make this an annual event, and she's working on this year's conference right now, and I thought I'd have her update you on the progress for this year's Internet Freedom Conference.
Yeah, thank you, John. As you mentioned, OCB is pleased to announce that we'll be celebrating our second Cuba Internet Freedom Conference on September 26 and 27. Last year, we had more than 300 people attended throughout the two-day conference. More than 20 guests visited us from Cuba, and the event made headlines both in Cuba and the U.S. This year's theme line, it's Internet as the link to unlimited possibilities. At the conference, we'll address the economic and social impact for the Cuban society due to Internet restrictions. For this year's conference, more than 30 speakers have already confirmed. We'll have 1 day of closed workshops and 2 days of open conferences. Cuban developers coming from the island will present case studies, a showcase of Cuban applications, and discuss social media usage and trends. This year's conference will also include a session on Venezuela and on how the Internet has been controlled during the actual crisis. The conference will close with the CIF Awards, a recognition to the work of the Cuban digital community. On this slide, you can see how the Miami Ad School will look when we host the conference there next month. And the following spot that we're going to show, it's a promo spot that a local station has been running as a public service announcement since the event is free and open to the public.
More than 300 people attended the Cuba Internet Freedom Conference in 2016. Cuba Internet Freedom. Fue una experiencia para todos los que tuvimos la oportunidad de ir desde Cuba, de mostrar nuestra visión de qué estaba pasando en Cuba.
Over 100 media covered the story. Thousands of mentions in social media.
Desde que nace el Internet se está tratando para que no sea un medio controlado por los gobiernos.
SIF 2017, September 26 to 27, at Miami Ad School.
Internet freedom is not some obscure technological subject. It is now central to human freedom. And that is exactly why it has so many enemies.
SIF 2017, learn about the challenges and opportunities for the Internet in Cuba. Cuba Internet Freedom Conference 2017, the link to unlimited possibilities. Join us. SIF is free and open to the public.
Are you getting good airing of that spot down in Miami?
Yes, we are, and as a matter of fact, we have a few media partners, including Miami Herald, some local stations, and even before we started, and we haven't started the media tour, as we're hoping to do in the next few weeks, and we already have 100 people registered on the Eventbrite, so we're looking to another successful conference.
And any word whether Senator Rubio will be able to make it in person this year?
We're still working on it, and all the Congress people have been showing some interest, even through their offices, confirming either their participation in person or sending messages to us.
Great.
Yes.
Governors, any?
If I can, there'd been great hope after President Obama's visit to Cuba that infrastructure on the island would start to open up and that there'd be more access for ordinary citizens. That is clearly not the case as we look now. How do you see access, where do you see the direction of internet access for ordinary Cubans in terms of, has there been a significant increase or not in the last year, and what does that mean for our activities?
Yes, I would say, and even the survey and information that we have polled within the island shows some interesting information in the sense that you will think you'll have more connections in Havana, and you have a lot of inland connections. And I think the Cuban are very inventive when it comes to overcoming, their limitations and the use of tools that you can find even at Office Max have been helpful, like the nano routers to propagate the so it's not, they're not waiting and depending of the infrastructure development. They're creating their own networks as intranets, and also as content sharing the internet that they take from the plazas into their houses, and then they do the mesh networks throughout the island. So there's a lot of increase in the usage, and especially social media. That's why we had approached a social media first strategy rather than pushing for websites, because websites can be controlled, but at the end of the day, social media such as Facebook and YouTube, and Cubans are using YouTube as a big outlet for, they have their own, they call it canales, channels, no? And they have their own stations, and they put all kind of information in there, and so we use the same tool to get information back and forth.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Ambassador Crocker.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, as you note, there was a great deal of hope that the President's visit would change things in a fundamental way. Hope, of course, is a very poor foundation for policy, and I would commend you, Malule, and your colleagues for not changing things, not backing off in any way, of continuing your remarkable successes in finding ways to get our messages to the Cuban people in spite of the ongoing, even intensifying interference from the Cuban government. You are all to be commended for that.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else? Okay, Malule, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, as we're in the middle of the ICC report, I'll remind you the ICC is the International Coordinating Council. And the next section we're going to talk about is a project not unlike Current Time that has two of our networks working together for a very important outcome, and that's Radio Free Asia and Voice of America. And so, as you know from previous discussions, Amanda Bennett and Libby Liu and Gary Thatcher have been leading a DPRK TV video project that will be jointly produced by VOA and RFA, both in their lanes, by the way. VOA telling America's story through the Korean diaspora in New Jersey, and RFA telling the story of defectors from the North living in Seoul. Libby is not here today, so in her absence, we have the pleasure of Ms. Min Mitchell from RFA to talk about progress to date. And Amanda, if you have anything you want to add at the end as well, that'd be fine too. But Min, please go ahead.
Let me try this again. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to meet you all. I am Min Mitchell, the RFA Managing Director for East Asia. Today, I'm very pleased to show you the clips from 4 different series that VOA and RFA have produced for North Korean audience. The point of the project is to counter North Korean propaganda and show North Koreans the reality of life outside DPRK. Not fiction, not soap operas, just real life. VOA and RFA together developed complementary programming for this project. All of these shows are publicly available and searchable in Korean language on a joint YouTube channel created by VOA's Yuna Lee. The channel's name translated into English, it's called Viewfinder. These programs showed ups and downs of reality of life of the Koreans living in the US and in South Korea. What I'll be showing you now is a promo of VOA's program called Palisades that presents the real life for ethnic Koreans living in Palisades, New Jersey. And from RFA, you will see clips from our reality series, My New Life, that follows the lives of 2 young defectors living in Seoul. Then a clip from our current events program, which shows what is trending on social media in South Korea. Finally, we'll show you clips from a series of defector profiles called Bravo My Life, which focus on individual defectors who have achieved their own definitions of success in South Korea. It is an honest look at the journey and obstacles they encountered leaving the North and finding their place in the South. So every episode is hosted by a defector who is now a broadcast journalist herself. Please enjoy. The first one will be watching VOA's show, Palisades.
뉴저지 최북단이에요. 맨하탄도 가깝고 인구는 한 2만 명.
영어 물론 그러면 이동대와 살아야 진짜 편리하고
Big Korean society.
많은 문화들을 접할 수가 있잖아요.
제가 좋아야지 남한테 얘기를 할 수 있잖아요.
The nerves always get to me, no matter if it's like a show or a little competition or a big competition.
팀의 제일 막내 아이가 이겼어요.
이 한민족의 문화라는 게 뭐냐면은 현대를 사는 우리 한국민의 정체성이 되는 거예요.
한식에서 쓰는 족발은 손님들이 와우 하는 그런 이펙트를 가지지 않을까.
Now we're taking you to Seoul, RF's reality series, My New Life.
네, 안녕하세요. 저는 탈북 방송인 강나라입니다.
네, 안녕하세요. 박용호입니다. 나이는 28살이고요.
진짜 기가 막혔어요. 너무 짱 좋았어.
안녕하세요, 좋네.
아직까지 그렇게 노력해 재밌어요.
내가 직접 가준 거야. 어버이날이라서 이거 카네이션이요. 고마워, 사장님.
우리가 좋게. 무서워. 아이돌 최고로.
꿈이 있다면 이제 배우가 됐으면 좋겠고.
사회에서는 정말 존경받는 사람이 되고 꼭 누군가에 필요한 사람이 될 수 있도록
The most talked about keyword of this week is no-look pass. No-look means not looking, and pass means passing a ball. This high-level technique made headlines this week because of a politician's absurd behavior. Pushes his suitcase to his secretary, who was at the airport to greet him. He handed his suitcase to his secretary without even looking at him. The public harshly criticized him. Many people created their own satirical videos and put them online. The reason no look has become the most talked about key word is that there are many people in South Korea who think his political bossiness and irresponsible behaviors shouldn't be forgiven. See you next time.
강하기 때문에.
불이 나를 쏠려고 막 달라붙어서 우리 피부가 이제 깨끗해질 거야 이제.
처음이에요? 내 이름 가지고 학원 한번 이름 지어버리라 하고 얼마나 감동이 쫙 밀려오는지 저절로 눈 안에 눈물이 꼴떡해지는 거예요.
제가 하고 싶은 걸 해냈잖아요. 그 성취감은 정말 이루 말할 수가 없어요. 너무 좋아요.
안녕하세요. 반갑습니다.
그래요?
네, 비 오기 전에
네.
내 노래.
안돼 못하겠어.
북한에서도 교원이었다가 결국 해외 여행도 다니고 참 보기가 좋은데요. 그분들이 아직은 수십
Thank you.
Men, nice job. Amanda, would you want to add anything?
I just want to say, I hope you can tell from these videos how much fun we're having working together. And John, you mentioned the lanes. It's would become really apparent to us that there's plenty of room in each lane for us and that the lanes are very, very complementary. So thank you very much, Min. And the one thing I'd just like to point out to you, she mentioned the creations of Unilee, just to underscore the commitment and the type of people we have. You may remember Unilee from 2009 when she was one of two journalists who strayed into North Korea from China and was arrested and sentenced to 12 years hard labor. Luckily, it was not 12 years, but she is now working for VOA. So,
Fantastic. That's probably, that along with Current Time, are probably the two best examples of cooperation. And we're looking for more, and more will come. The next up is MBN and Ambassador Alberto Fernandez. Now, he doesn't have a slick video to show, but he will next time because of all the work that he's working on. But since he began on July the 17th, he's only really been on the posts for 6 weeks, and I thought you'd enjoy just hearing from him on how he's thinking about the opportunity ahead at MBN and Al Hurra.
Thank you, John. It's been I think, a very hectic but very rewarding 6 weeks on the job. A lot of things happening, a lot of things that I will be able to reveal to you all in the next few months as we go ahead. My initial focus has been very strongly on enhancing the distinctness and uniqueness of MBN's products. Of course, we do some things which are quite unique and quite distinct, but it's a constant struggle, and it's an essential struggle to find ways to make yourself distinctive and unique and to leverage the reality of U.S. government or USG-supported Arabic language broadcasting in an environment which is quite saturated with Arabic broadcast media. So we've looked at ways that we can do that, so we can enhance that distinctiveness in things that we have that others don't have. One of the things that we focused on is development of an op-ed page on Al Hora's website with a whole range of columnists and writers who are secularists, who are Islamic reformists, who are liberals, who are writing about things that you occasionally see in the Arab media, but you don't see them. It is concentrated and consistent and is an aggressive way as we're doing. You can find liberal columns on Al Arabiya online, or you can find them in Lebanese newspapers or in Egyptian newspapers occasionally, but you're not going to see it with the intensity and the tempo and the continuation that we're doing it, where every single day you're having people that are well known that are writing for us, and they range a wide range of people from the former Al Jazeera bureau chief in Washington, who resigned because he didn't like some of the things that were going on Al Jazeera, to a former Syrian minister of culture. And you see the type of stuff people are writing about is that's heavily political, of course. These are commentaries, but also they're writing about American culture and arts, etc. The reaction has been extremely positive. We've certainly received a lot of reaction from the key audience that we're seeking to reach here, which is a kind of an intellectual class in the Arab world, which has not been challenged or engaged in this way before. The reaction has been very good. Most of the columnists are writing in Arabic. A few of them are writing in English, and it's being translated into Arabic. We had Ilan Berman of the American Foreign Policy Council write a piece just recently on Beware Iran's Jihadist Legion. They received a tremendous reaction and commentaries and shares. Continue to develop this. This is a way of offering premium, unique content that people in the Arab world won't be able to find elsewhere. We're trying to do this across the board. On broadcast media, we're reviving an old thing and we're introducing a new thing. An old thing that we're reviving is something which has happened before, which is talking about great Americans of the past, American stories of the past in short PSAs. This is something I think that all of us have done at some point. That's not that unusual. What is unusual, and what we're doing now that Al Hora never did before, was talking about great Arab and Muslim reformists, secularists, and liberal leaders of the past. This is Fatima Mernissi, the great North African intellectual and defender of women's rights and of human rights. This had 80,000 views online. It's been very positive reaction. There have been 12 of these so far, ranging from people like Farag Foda, the Egyptian intellectual who was assassinated by an Al-Qaeda gunman 25 years ago, to the father of Arab and Islamic secularism, Sheikh Ali Abdel Khalek, earlier in the 20th century. These are people that some people know about, but young people in the region don't know about them, and they're often or rarely talked about as heroes, as people to emulate. So this is something that we're providing that doesn't exist anywhere. It is concentrated and consistent in its regular way anywhere among this very saturated, very full Arab media environment. We seek to find ways to highlight that distinctiveness and uniqueness. A third way we're doing that is investigative reporting. Now, we all do investigative reporting, and Al Hora has done investigative reporting before, and this is obviously a staple of everyone. What we're trying to do is to do investigative reporting that, again, leverages the uniqueness that we have that our colleagues, our rivals in the region don't have. So we're setting up a special team to do this, but in the meanwhile, we've launched a series of hard-hitting reports. The first one was about Hezbollah in the United States. This is an issue which some people in the region talk about, others in the region would never talk about. The second one was about hate speech or hate television in the Arab world. This had a very positive reaction, had 500,000 views online, was a broadcast first and then online. The third one was about the violent roots of the Muslim Brotherhood, and also received a very positive reaction, included footage made in Egypt by our people in Egypt. And the latest one we did was about the ongoing propaganda war between pro-Qatar, anti-Qatar, Al Jazeera, Al Arabiya. 600,000 views online, tremendous reaction, shared thousands of times. And we continue to do that. But it's not just only about Arab media or about what's going on in the Arab world. We also want to present the nuance and the reality of what's going on in the United States, including some things which are usually not covered, including things like healthcare crises and the opioid crisis in the United States. We have a little short clip of an upcoming Al-Hurra documentary on the issue.
In the 70s, I used to sniff a lot of cocaine, but I didn't start sniffing coke. I started as a dealer.
I didn't care who I hurt. I didn't care what I did. I needed that drug.
When he did relapse, he was given pure fentanyl, and his was not laced with fentanyl. His was 100% pure fentanyl, so he could not have survived.
We have 150 plus people a day dying from opioids in the United States.
For anyone who wants it or needs it, do we have the proper treatment? And that's the most important when you deal with heroin.
I don't want to step out more to the street. I don't want to use drugs. I want to get a job. I want a family.
I guess what I would say is I miss him terribly. And that I really, really, really wish that he was still here.
So you see, we did have a video.
Yeah.
The idea is to hit both, go deeper in the challenges of the regions, the uncovered stories in the region, and also to present dimensions of the American reality that audiences in the Arab world are not going to see on the usual stations in the region. So we'll continue to do that. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Governors? Yes. Mike.
Thanks very much, Alberto. It looks like a really terrific beginning for your time at MBN. I know it's early, but I wonder if you've got any sense of reaction either from audiences, viewership changes, or from governments in the region who may be uncomfortable with some of the work that you're putting out now.
We haven't gotten reaction from governments that I've seen. We've gotten a negative reaction from some media related to some foreign terrorist organizations. There's been, Al-Hurra was often not in the news in this way. Al-Hurra's been in the news in the region, but not in this way. For example, there were 2 columns about us in a pro-Hezbollah newspaper in Beirut in the last month. One of them about, ironically, this is actually quite amusing, ironically, we did the hate television piece that we did. A lot of it was hate directed against Shia Muslims by Salafi jihadists. And so this pro-Hezbollah newspaper wrote a piece about the cunning effort of Al-Hurra to be on the side of the oppressed, to try to somehow, that we're playing games. Obviously, that coming from adversaries, that's a very good thing for them to be saying that we're being sneaky and cunning and clever in our stuff. What we're doing is covering something that hadn't been covered before, but they saw it as we were being very, very clever about it. So there has been a reaction. I expect that there'll be more the deeper we go.
So thank you, Alberto. I just want to thank Ambassador Crocker, who actually led me to find Alberto for MBN when I put out a call for some help when we knew Brian was going to be departing. And so thank you, sir. Good job.
Where's my finder's fee?
So moving on now to VOA, and Amanda Bennett, who, by the way, has really, among a lot of things in her 18 months as the director of the VOA, she's really intensified the work of the VOA in terms of telling America's story and really being true to the mission of the VOA. And not just America's story that happens inside the Beltway here or across the street, America's story all over the country, and all very interesting and different areas of interest. And what she's going to talk about today is a 26-episode documentary called My American Story. And so I'll let her take it away with that. Amanda?
Thank you very much, John. I'm going to sneak one thing in ahead of time before that. I'd just like to show you one thing that's very important, both to VOA's present, but also to its history. Because yesterday we gave the last of a 20-year award that was named after the Cowan family. And many of you remember Jeffrey Cowan, who was a VOA director in the 90s. And his father, 50 years earlier, was the second VOA director. And Jeffrey's sister, Holly Cowan-Schulman, is a professor of public diplomacy. So all three of them have deep commitments to public diplomacy. And they had started an award for humanitarian reporting. And in addition to the Telling America's Story that I'll be mentioning in a few minutes, we also think that one of the things that VOA and our fellow organizations do best is humanitarian coverage. So I'd just like to show you just a really quick compendium of the winners of this award, which was given for hunger across Africa. We deployed all over the African continent to show not just the effects of the biggest, probably the biggest humanitarian crisis in decades and decades on this continent, but also to look at the fact that some of the causes of it. Some of the causes are weather, of course, but they're also man-made and thus amenable to solution. So we had not three people, but many people, the three winners, went to a hospital in Somaliland and to refugee camps in Somalia. And we had one reporter who went into Chad and also traveled with Boko Haram troops. Again, we did very in-depth reporting on that because Boko Haram is one of the causes of famine in Nigeria. We also had again, with our commitment to digital work, we had all of these things gathered together into one digital space where they could be all accessed in one place. So this is just a really quick review of some of the things that we did. So each one of these things represents a link to a video or a story or something online, and we had some interesting country profiles, and then we showed the spread of the famine across the country. So, okay, thank you. Okay, now I will get to what John was talking about, and he's absolutely quite right that I see the core of VOA's mission is to tell America's story. And just like the fantastic work we saw here, we think that the best way to counter false narratives is through authentic narratives. The authentic narratives that show life as it is actually lived in this country is really important. And so this is, again, it's another piece of cooperation pretty much identical to the cooperation we do with RFA, only this time it works with our current time network. We produced what we called My American Story. It's a 26-episode documentary series that's showing just the lives of Russian speakers all over the United States who came to this country to create a new life. And again, as part of our commitment to not just tell America's story, but to tell all of America's story, we made a special effort to represent lots of different professions and also lots of different locations outside the United States to break away from our Beltway coverage to spread out to the interesting people that live elsewhere. We featured a fashion photographer in New York, a software entrepreneur in San Francisco, a culinary tour guide in Miami, a woman who she's featured for her struggles to balance work and family in Chattanooga. And we also are going to be having musicians and artists and other entrepreneurs around the country, such as one who started a fencing academy in Houston, Texas. So I'd just like to give you a quick sample of it. Please.
Город меня вдохновил сильно, очень. Я приехала там 6 чемоданов, работала уборщицей, чтобы какие-то деньги всяких прав. То есть иммиграция — это нелегкий путь. Можно вот без ничего на ровном месте приехать, иметь мечту и постепенно ее осуществить.
Переезд полон стресса, с другой стороны, были какие-то, естественно, положительные моменты. Я тут вырос, и мне город этот знаком.
Я просто не могла поверить. Казалось, что я как будто в голливудском кино. Никогда не могла подумать, что я в какой-то момент вдруг окажусь в Америке, и это будет мой дом.
Америка покорила меня своей природой. И у меня такая мысль в голове. Я хочу, чтобы мои дети experience, да, чтобы у них был доступ к этому, чтобы они вообще жили и учились именно там.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amanda. Governors, any comment, questions? Okay, are you ready? Okay. So last, you may remember about a year ago at the suggestion of my excellent executive assistant, Yoruba Mitchell, who's a Peace Corps veteran, and she asked if I would go with her to visit the new, or the outgoing Peace Corps director, because she had an idea. And Yoruba's idea has to do with VOA learning English. Now, VOA has been in the business of helping people around the world speak English since 1959. And you'd be amazed how many people come up to me who visit here or when I'm overseas that tell me that they learned English as a child on Voice of America. It's actually quietly one of the most successful things we do at Voice of America. And Yoruba had an idea, and her idea was a novel form of distribution to get more English speakers in touch with VOA content that are outside of the range of our transmission systems. And her idea was to work with the Peace Corps volunteers around the world and have them carry with them the Voice of America Learning English module, and they could teach English in villages all over the world. So I said, all right, Yoruba, that's a great idea, go run with it. And she did, and like all of you, you check in every once in a while on projects, and I checked in. It'd been about 6 months, and I said, hey, Yoruba, how's that project for learning English with the Peace Corps going? Well, I'll let her tell you. Yoruba? Yoruba, would you go to the middle chair there? I think everybody could see you better. Please, thank you.
So, hello, everyone. BBG and Peace Corps have considerable overlap. The mission, the territory, and the number of former Peace Corps volunteers here at BBG, and also the number of BBG journalists who experience Peace Corps in their home countries, all make working together in support of public diplomacy an easy fit. VOA Learning English has received letters spanning decades from volunteers praising VOA's English curriculum and thanking VOA for sending them materials upon request. We have continued to bring VOA Learning English content to rural villages around the world. VOA Learning English content is now available for download on Peace Corps' online knowledge and resource portal, PC Live. We have begun loading flash drives with Learning English content to be distributed to volunteers in the field. To date, we have provided 8,055 VOA Learning English word books to Peace Corps volunteers in 20 countries in Latin America, Eastern Europe, Asia, and Africa. The nature of the Peace Corps community is such that every book and every flash drive distributed has the potential to reach at least 5 other people, and feedback from volunteers has been universally positive. This has proven to be a successful, effective, low-cost way to distribute VOA Learning English content to otherwise difficult-to-reach areas of BBG's broadcast regions. And by distributing educational materials to these regions, we further our mission of engaging, informing, and connecting people around the world. Thank you.
Will this carry on?
And that's my report. Thank you, Yoruba. Good job.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, well, thank you, John, and I want to thank everyone around the table. This has been an exceptional meeting. Are there any questions from the governors? There being none, let me note that the next board meeting will be held here at BBG headquarters in Washington on November 15th, 2017. I'll work closely with my fellow governors and CEO Lansing to develop the agenda for that meeting. I encourage all governors to give me or BBG staff input on topics you wish to see addressed at the next meeting. Do any governors wish to move to adjourn the meeting? Governor Kempner, so moved. Is there a second? Second. Ambassador Crocker, second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. And on that note, we hereby conclude the formal meeting of the Broadcasting Board of Governors. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.